All right. So, welcome everybody to our Spring Ollie program for near death and spiritually transformative experiences. And my name is Catherine, and I'm so happy today because we have a beautiful guest, and her name is Mary Grace. I met Mary Grace through the IANS program, and she's also a facilitator and moderator for IANS sharing groups. And Mary Grace does a lot of things with groups. She has some groups up in the Finger Lakes region of New York, and she has a metaphysical group and also a UFO group. And she's had NDEs and STEs, and she's also an author of 2 books so far. And I sent that information out for you, and it'll be in the link also. All right, so Mary Grace, I want to welcome you and thank you so much for being here with us.
Well, it's an honor to be here with you. I'm happy to be here talking with the Stony Brook Adult Learning Group, and I thank Catherine for giving me the opportunity to share my passion for the paranormal. So I'm going to be talking about my near-death experience, and it's going to be in 2 parts. And because one of the things I like to talk about that's different is I like to focus on the after effects of how my life changed after my near-death experience. So I'll talk about what led up to that, the experience itself, and I'll ask Catherine if she has any questions, and then I'll jump into the after effects, and at the end we'll open it up for Q&A. So I like to start my story, kind of a sad note, but I start my story when I hit bottom in life. And I think for most people that have had spiritually transformative experiences, this is how it happens. You hit bottom in life. And for me, that bottom was occurred on November 1st, All Saints Day, 2001. And what was happening in my life at that time is I was extremely ill with 2 incurable illnesses, lupus and epilepsy. And for those who aren't familiar with lupus, it's an autoimmune disease where your body attacks healthy organs and is slowly killing itself from the inside out. And the effects of lupus made me extremely tired all the time. I would sleep 12, 15 hours a day. I was in a lot of pain, a lot of joint pain constantly. And also with the seizure disorder, the epilepsy, I had between 6 and 8 seizures a day. I had 5 medical specialists that I saw on a regular basis, and I was on 24 different medications. And on top of all that, from the age of 14, I had been addicted to drugs and alcohol. So I had some pretty interesting cocktails that I took. In this state, this time in my life, I was alive, but I wasn't living. And I was dying, but I wasn't dead. Now, mentally, I was severely depressed from I was grieving the recent loss of my mother. And emotionally and spiritually, I was already dead. I knew I had to do something. I just had enough. I had to do something. And the only thing I could think of to do was to drive to the cemetery to be near my mother. And on that cold November night, I got on my knees on my mother's chilly grave, and I prayed to God to take me home. Now, I don't know if I'd call it praying. I actually call it more yelling and screaming at God because I was mad. I was mad and I had enough. And I started pleading and praying. Why me, God? Why me? Why has all this happened to me? Why have I been cursed with these illnesses? Why am I so sick and in pain? Have you no mercy, God? Have you no compassion? Make up your mind. Either heal me or take me home. Basically, either poop or get off the pot, God. You got to make up a decision. Don't leave me in this state of limbo. And I'm just sobbing and I'm crying. I'm pouring my heart out to God. Have you no mercy? Have you no compassion? Why me? Why me? And then I moved into making a deal with God. Now, I'm sure many of you have done this. Make a deal with God. God, give me a sign that you have not abandoned me, and I will, what will I do? I know, I'll quit drinking. That's what I'll do. I'll quit drinking. I wasn't ready to give up the drugs, so I didn't mention that. Like you didn't know about it, right? So I made this deal with God. And then after what seemed like hours of crying and screaming and yelling and begging and praying, I'm in the cemetery. I was just emotionally spent. I'm not getting any answers. I'm not getting anything. And I just admitted defeat, put my tail between my legs, and went home. Just devastated and spent. Well, the next day, I got my sign from God. I had what is known as a near-death experience. And I'll tell you the events that led up to this. So the next day, I decided that I was going to drive to the city. And when I say the city, I mean the city of Rochester, New York, Western New York State. Because I live in the country on a 6,000 acre forest. I'm very rural. So I decided I would drive to the city to buy some drugs. And while I was there, I would go to the Borders bookstore. Used to love going to Borders. God rest her soul, my favorite bookstore. I would go to the bookstore while I was in there and get the latest book from John Edward. At that time, it was called One Last Time. So, as I often did in the morning, if I wanted to have some semblance of a normal life, I popped a couple of amphetamines to keep me awake. And to give me the energy, I drove to Rochester, drove downtown Rochester, about 50 miles away. And I purchased a bag of cocaine and got in my car, took that bag of cocaine, and I put it in the console of my car. And then I drove to a nearby liquor store and I bought a bottle of whiskey. I stuck it out underneath the front seat of my car. And then I hopped on what's called the 390 Expressway that goes around Rochester because now I'm heading out to the suburbs to go to the bookstore. So as I'm driving down 390, I got my sign from God. Now, many of you may know what it's like when you hear a song on the radio or maybe at church, and the words to that song speak directly to your heart and soul and seems to be the message that you need at that precise moment in your life. Well, for me, as I'm driving my car and listening to the radio, a song came out. And the song was one that I knew very, very well, but probably hadn't heard in 20 years. It was a song by the rock group, The Styx, the 80s group, The Styx. And many of you may remember that. It's one of my favorite bands. And the words that spoke to my broken spirit were these: hard times come and hard times go, And in between you hope and pray the scars don't show. Life is strange, but so unsure. In days you hardly make it through. You swear that there's a curse on you and nothing seems to fit. Things don't go your way. You know you've had enough. You've had the right to say, why me? Why me? The name of the song was Why Me? And the words described everything that I was going through in the cemetery the night before, including the exact words that I begged over and over to God, why me? So as soon as I heard this song, I knew it was my sign from God. I just knew it. And I just burst out into tears and I'm crying and I'm sobbing. And I'm like, thank you, God. Thank you, God. I'm driving my thank you. Thank you for not abandoning me. Now, at that same instant, I felt a bolt of electricity go through my entire body. And the strange thing is that there was no pain. It was if I was struck by the proverbial lightning bolt of God. So I had this electrical charge. I get the song. It's all happening in a holy instant. I burst out in tears. I'm driving down the expressway. Thank you, God. Thank you. Thank you for not abandoning me. All these emotions. And I was right near the exit that I needed to get off of the expressway to go to Borders bookstore. So I managed to go at the expressway, and just right around the corner was the bookstore. I pull into the bookstore parking lot, and I was quite a ways from the front door. I just wanted to be place that no other cars are around and I could just kind of be by myself. So I pull into the bookstore parking lot, put the car in park, and for some reason I noticed the time on the clock. It was 5:15 p.m. I shut the car off. I put my head back against the headrest. And I'm still crying. I'm still sad. Thank you, God. Thank you. Thank you for not abandoning me. Thank you. And the next thing I know, I am floating up, up, up into the most beautiful, brilliant, white light. And as I reached this incredible sight, I felt immersed in a tremendous force of love that permeated every cell of my body. And this light and this love was not like anything I experienced before. It was a million times more intense. And as I reached it, as I'm in that light, then like a peace and tranquility came over me. I was free of all pain. I was free of all earthly cares. And I felt like I was like wrapped in a down-filled comforter and being comforted by a doting grandmother. I felt like I was the most important person in the universe. And then I relaxed and I surrendered to this light and love as I knew that I was there to rest and to heal. And I recognized the place that I was in. And I recognized this being of light. I was with my creator in heaven. and I was home. And I was not there to be judged. There was no conditions. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. Just the simple purity of unconditional love. Now, condemnation and punishment were concepts that did not and could not exist in this all-loving light. And I knew any sins I had ever committed back on earth were already forgiven. And I knew everything was going to be all right. Everything was going to be all right. Now, the next thing that happened, I went into is commonly known as the life review. Now, I'm not going to get into all the details of that. It's kind of like a whole nother talk. But, and also because, I did things in my life that I was not proud of. But I was also shown good things that I did. But the most important lesson that I learned from the life review is that I had total, complete understanding, total comprehension as to why all the things happened in my life. People that had hurt me along the way were only playing their role and helping me in my spiritual progression. And I understood that all the insanity and suffering of my life had purpose and meaning and made sense. And after the life review, I'm back in the light. And without any spoken words, God communicated to me. He said, I have done all that you asked of me. I gave you a sign that I hadn't abandoned you, and I brought you home. You cannot stay, however. Your work is not yet finished. Now, in response to this, I indicated that I was okay with this decision. I was okay with it because I knew it was the right thing to do. And also, being in all that light and love, there is nothing that I would not do for anyone that loved me that much. And with that thought, I felt myself being pulled backwards, like separated from the light again. The light was going this way, and I was being pulled backwards. The next thing I knew, I'm sitting in my car in the parking lot of Borders bookstore. Now, the first thing I realized is that I was in a state of euphoria and ecstasy, and that was a million times better than any drug I had ever taken. I was on such a high. It was incredible. And I'm not even sure what happened. I'm trying to process everything that happened, and I'm just feeling off the charts. And then I checked the time, I look at my clock. It's 6 o'clock. 45 minutes had passed since I parked the car. And I said to myself out loud, I said, what the hell just happened? Ironically, evidently heaven just happened to me, but I didn't know. And like I said, I'm just sitting there trying to process everything that happened. Sitting there in this state of euphoria. I'm trying to come back down and figure out where I am and what's going on. And slowly, I started coming back to reality, this reality. And I started remembering a promise that I made the night before. And I had gotten my sign from God. So I took the bag of cocaine out of the console of the car. I took the bottle of whiskey out from underneath the seat. I'm looking at him. This is not going to be easy. But a promise is a promise. At the same time, all of a sudden, these things meant nothing to me. They were like penny candy because these drugs were nothing compared to the high that I was on at that moment. So as I sat in my car and kind of getting my head together, I kind of checked myself over. I guess I'm okay. I mean, I feel great. I might as well go into the bookstore and get the book I came for. So I opened the car door and I stepped into the parking lot. And it didn't take me long to realize that the world I was stepping into was not the same world that I had left 45 minutes earlier. Everything had changed. And the first thing that I noticed, I moved across the parking lot towards the front of the bookstore, but I didn't walk. It was as if I was floating. I felt like I was floating. So I floated over to the bookstore and I walk in there. You have to go towards the back to get to the metaphysical section. And I started looking around and I would, look at another customer, the next aisle, whatever. I'd see another customer. And as soon as I set eyes on that person, I had this overwhelming sense of love for that person. And I just wanted to run up to them and hug them and tell them how much I love them. And don't you know how much God loves you and everything's going to be all right. And fortunately, I was able to restrain myself from doing that. And I got my book and I got the heck out of that store. But it was only with time that I realized how much my life had changed the day I saw the light. I'm going to take a break here before I go in the after effects. Did you have any questions, Catherine? Or
Yeah, I wrote a few things down. All right, so a couple things I stored. Let's see. Okay, so I well, one of the things that you talked about earlier was the depression that you were feeling about your mom and the loss and
yeah.
and how you went, it was like you were at your last straw,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you asked God to give you a sign, and then you heard the music, the song, which I love that. I love the songs, how the songs come in. Let me just see what else I stored here. Oh, this is the one I really I was curious about. What did you learn about in your I'm sorry. when you had your life review about the people that were, you said they were playing roles that you were made aware of.
Hmm.
You talk a
Yeah.
bit about that?
Well, one of the um I'm trying to think, like I said, goes into later on in my talk, but I had one interesting encounter. I actually saw things like this one encounter I saw my priest, and he's going to come into it later. But in it actually, in hindsight, the fact that I saw this in my life review just really, really made a huge impact. Um, and I saw things from his life. I saw scenes from my life, but I was shown scenes from this priest's life. Like, why am I seeing these things from his life? And I was shown these scenes from when he was like a little boy and he was bullied and he was it was a scene where he was playing baseball. They were going to play baseball and everyone's choosing up the teams, when you're like 8, 9 years old and pick this person. Well, nobody wanted this. I'll call him Father Tom. Nobody wanted Tom on their team, so he was like picked last. And there was a couple scenes like that where he, ran home crying to his mother. It made me have such compassion for him and a couple other things that he went through in his life. And as I share the story later on, I can talk about it more, what an impact it made on me. But also the biggest impact of the life review was the choices on a daily basis that I continue to make, um, understanding fully in the back of my mind always that I can't say that or I can't do that because I know it will come back to me in my life review. So it was a very empowering experience, to say the least. It really made me, understand that words, our actions and words really do make a difference. Not only in a bad way, but also in a good way, too. The little things that we do, such as, smile at the checkout lady at the grocery store. Ask her if she's having a good day.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mary Grace. That's all I really wanted to ask for now.
Okay, then I'll go on. So the first thing I noticed again with the love thing, the days go on. You understand that I live in the country. I live in a 6,000 acre state forest. So, woods and fields. I like to go for walks in woods and fields behind my house. And there's a lake nearby that's 15-minute walk. So I don't have like a lot of contact with a lot of people. But I noticed that my heart just overflowed with love for all things and all people. I love so much, it physically hurt as I felt a constant pain in my chest. I felt this, I felt like this living presence. I, I thought my heart was going to explode. It was this constant pain in my chest. And all I could think of was in that original movie, The Alien, the original one, where the alien comes bursting out of the guy's chest. And I thought, well, this is going to happen to me. Something's in there and it's going to come out. That's all I could think of. I mean, I love so much is like I love the homeless person on the street as much as I love my husband. I love the trees and the animals and the birds as much as I love my family and friends. Like I said, I love so much. It was just incredible. And realized right away that God was in everything and there's nothing that was not of God. So if I was on my walk and I look at a flower, I would just feel the presence of God and the connection with that flower, and it would just bring tears to my eye and make me cry. or to see a butterfly warming its wings in the sun. I would just connect with that and just feel all this love in it. It was just overwhelming. And then when I walked in the rain and the drops of rain would land on my arm, I would feel God's love in every drop. And from then on, after that first time, whenever it rained, I called it liquid love because it's just love coming out of the sky. It's all I could feel. And I guess, I was doing research and I had what is known as a unitive experience because I felt connected with everything and knew that I was one with everything. And because of this, I couldn't ever harm another living creature because I knew that if I did, I would harm not only that creature, that person, but I'd also be hurting God and I'd be hurting myself because we're all one. And I couldn't even hurt an ant because I know that that ant has purpose and meaning in life and that we're all connected. I'm one of these people that, you see a bug, you get the dustpan and you go like this and you take them outside. It's like, or someone sees a spider and they go to swap it. No, 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 don't kill it. Don't kill it. It makes me so mad when people do that. So I was just connected to everything and merging. I found because I was one with everything that I could merge with whatever I focused on. And physical laws no longer applied to me. For example, like when I walked to the lake, and this lake I go to, it's Hemlock Lake. It's a pristine lake. There's no houses on it. It's just forest, part of the watershed forest area. So if I focused on like the eagle flying overhead, I could feel what it was like to soar on the breeze and maybe catch a thermal. And when I looked down on the lake, a lot of times there was geese that were just floating on the lake. And I could merge with the geese and feel what it was like to kind of just bob up and down the waves, peace and joy. And one of the things I like to do is on a walk one day, and I picked up these, maybe you're familiar with these milkweed pods. They're really tall and they're green in the fall. You can open them up and they're full of these little white fluffy seeds. And I could take the seeds out and scatter them to the wind and then merge with them and feel what it was like to kind of just float across the breeze. And then in the wintertime, I found that I could merge with a snowflake that was falling from the sky and feel what it was like to gently fall in a sense of peace and joy. Now, who knew that snowflakes were joyful? But they really are. So, because of this, I just wanted to spend all my time just being, merging with different things and just being with everything and being with God and nature. And this was my life and meditation. It's all I cared about. And because of this, my relationship with God became very intense. I was not only obsessed, I was possessed by God. And then one day I had an epiphany. I thought to myself, well, if God is inside of me, he must be inside of everybody else too. And if he loves me that much, he must love everybody else the same. Well, they didn't teach me this in religious education growing up. No, I was taught that God was separate from me And the only way to be with him was to follow all the church rules. Well, now my religion isn't making sense. So some of the other after effects, and I'll talk more about that towards the end, but I just mentioned some of the other after effects, and that was like my consciousness expanded. So that included my psychic ability. And I found that number one, in meditation, I could just meditate and then go connect with that light anytime I wanted. So if you can imagine, that's all I want to do, sit around, sit in the light all day long. But I could also communicate with my angels, my guides, my family and friends in heaven. Of course, I connected with my mother. I even met my grandmother, who I never really knew because she died when I was 5 years old. So now I'm spending all my time communicating with my spirit friends too. And I found I could communicate with the animals in nature. So the other thing is after effect, and this was the big one, is that I noticed huge changes in my physical body. The first thing that I noticed was right away after my near-death experience the next day, my seizures immediately stopped. I had no more seizures after that. And I also had this tremendous amount of energy, where before it was all I could do to walk to my car or walk through a grocery store or walk, get through work day. And I only worked part-time with my lupus. Now I've got all this energy, and I was walking my dogs to the lake every day, which is a mile there and a mile back, a 2-mile hike. I got all this energy. I'm feeling great. I hardly ever ate because I would just forget to eat. I wouldn't even think about eating. And I said it's kind of like being on amphetamines, but a natural high, I guess. And so I decided I wanted to know what happened to me physically that day. So I went to all 5 of my doctors and I got completely checked out. I had a new EEG of my brain waves, a new EKG of my heart, also had an ultrasound of my heart. I had my test for lupus, was an anti-nuclear antibody test for lupus. And all my tests came back negative. And even the hole in my heart was gone. I had been completely healed of 2 incurable illnesses, lupus and epilepsy. And on top of that, I kept my deal with God. And I was no longer addicted to drugs and alcohol. I didn't even desire them. It's like I just went cold turkey. No longer even had the desire to do drugs and alcohol. So I was cured of that too. Now I want to talk about what I call the downsides, the downside of the near-death experience. Things that probably a lot of people don't talk about. And it's different for everybody. For me, one of the downsides was trying to eat food. It's hard to eat something that you feel at one with. It felt like cannibalism. For example, for me to eat a hamburger, to look at the hamburger, I didn't see a burger. I saw the big brown eyes of a cow. I was like one with that cow. How can I possibly eat it? So for that reason, I just quit eating meat because that eliminated a whole food group that I didn't have to feel guilty about eating. But even a piece of bread, I was keenly aware that something had to die in order for me to live. And that bothered me. Even a stalk of wheat that became my bread gave its life for me. And that bothered me. And it kind of made me mad because I was like, I would gladly lay down my life for that cow or that stalk of wheat so I could be back in heaven with God. I became jealous of my food. So these are just some of the really strange things that go on when you're conscious of these things. And integration between the two worlds, I often said if I had 3 feet, two would have been on the other side and one would have been on this side. Integration was a lengthy roller coaster of a ride, emotionally, physically, spiritually. I was living in two worlds. And I was very aware that this was not my home. I was in this world, but I was not of it. So I felt like an alien here. I was a stranger. And this was just a temporary place for me, and I just need to get through it till I go home. So doing things like the laundry, paying bills, cleaning the house, going to work, those things really didn't seem to matter to me so much anymore. And, as long as I was outside, as long as I was outside in nature, I was in bliss, I was with God. But when I had to play the role of the wife, the sister, the mother to my pets, not so much. I really kind of resented it. I just didn't want to be there. I didn't want to do that. Just be outside, meditation, nature, God. So I kind of became a basket case, to say the least. And no, the laundry wasn't getting done. The bills weren't getting paid. The house wasn't getting clean, much to the chagrin of my husband. And I knew I needed help. But who would I go to for help? Now, I'm in the mental health field. I knew if I went to a colleague, to a fellow psychologist, they would probably suggest, you know, psychiatric help, go, 30 days of hospitalization and some medication. But this wasn't a medical condition or medical issue. This was a God issue. God had taken over my life. In a lot of ways, I just wanted it back. So I decided I would go to the one person I thought I could trust and I thought who would understand. I decided to go to my priest. And I was raised Catholic. And to me, it was a very scary thing to go to a priest to talk to one-on-one. I'd never done it before. And just to pick up the phone and make that call to make an appointment to see him took all the courage. But I was desperate. I was desperate, so I did it. So I went to my appointment, sat down, and told the priest this whole story I just told you. And he sat there very patiently listening to me. And when I was through, he became very stern and said, "Don't you realize that what you're doing is dabbling with the devil? You're communicating with spirits, your mother. Don't you know that goes against the church teachings? That is just evil." And I think this whole story that you told me is just a huge hallucination that was brought on by all the drugs that you take. Obviously, you're a drug addict, and you just hallucinated the whole thing. You need to see a psychiatrist. And furthermore, you need to find another church. I was like, what? I didn't say anything. I left that meeting, ran out of there, went home and sobbed to my husband. I just sobbed. I couldn't believe it. But then after a day or so, instead of being sad, I got mad. Who is this priest to tell me that I can't go to church? I was born and raised in that church, small town. I've been there, going there for 40 years. I was baptized there. I had my first communion there. All my sacraments, I was married there. This was my town. This was my church. Now, that priest had only been there for like 3 years because the way they have to move around, priest around, and we all kind of know why. So I said, I'm going to go to church anyhow. So that Sunday, I went to Mass. The next day, a Livingston County sheriff shows up at my front door and says to me, by order of this priest, you are not to set foot on church property ever again, or you will be arrested for trespassing. Wow. Of course, I was devastated, and I couldn't understand it. I was legally excommunicated from my hometown church. And being in a small town and knowing everybody, I felt like I was wearing the scarlet letter. Only my letter was U for unacceptable because I wasn't good enough to be a Catholic. But I felt an injustice had been done. And I had this burning question. I couldn't understand it. If God could love me and accept me, why couldn't my own religion? And if we can talk to the God and the saints in heaven, why can't we talk to Grandma or Uncle Joe? What's up with that? There seems to be a huge contradiction in church teachings. And I felt an injustice had to be done, and I needed to right a wrong. For myself and for people like me who were forced to make a decision between their spiritual gifts and their religion. So I spent the next 10 years doing research and writing a book on the Communion of Saints doctrine, which is just Catholic speak for spirit communication. It's all in the words that you use. And writing the book was my therapy. And at that time also, I started my own ministry, Gifts of Grace Ministry, because I wanted to help other people that were going through spiritually transformative experiences or trying to understand their experiences in light of their faith, no matter what their religion. So I wrote the book, and I'll like to talk about the books after Q&A. And I want to end by a little show and tell. My show and tell is samples of my life before my near-death experience and after. I have them right here. My life before my near-death experience. These are the medications that I was on, all 24. Now I look at this and I say, no wonder I was sick. This is my life after. I take vitamins. I take actually a lot of supplements. Another example, life before my near-death experience. I was actually known as a beer babe, as I hung out at the local bar and I would wait on people for exchange for free beer. And afterwards, I mainly drink water. So with that, like I said, I'll open it up to questions and talk a little bit, but I want to wrap my books later. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let me come in and oh wow, that was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. Wow, so many things, there are so many after effects that you had. They're just amazing because those two diseases that you had are really um, life-altering diseases, and actually three, right? You were also an
Yeah,
addict. You were
yeah,
alcoholic and drugs. So all three of those diseases were gone after that. That's incredible. And also, oh, I wanted to ask you, how old were you, or how many years ago was that when you had that experience?
it
That
was 2001. I was showing my age. I was 40,
you were 40. Okay.
41. Yeah,
Okay.
41. Yeah.
Wow. And then, when you decided to go to your priest and then to get that reaction, I, I can't even imagine how that must have felt, to be so vulnerable and talking to,
Hmm.
and then to get that reaction. Um, but then you used it as a pivotal point in your life's journey to help others, which is really incredible also. So turning pain into into joy and light for others is really wonderful.
Yeah, and one of the things I wanted to mention is because, I had some friends that knew I got kicked out of the church and my one girlfriend was a lawyer. And she says, "We're gonna sue, we're gonna do this and that, and you're gonna go back in church." And I'm like, no.
Yeah,
And I wasn't mad at all at that priest. And it was because of what I saw in my life review.
yeah.
I knew that it's like I needed to be kicked out of the nest, or I needed to have my blanket taken away from me. And he
Okay,
was the one that kicked me out. He was the one that took away, ripped my blanket away from me.
that was
And
his role.
that
Yeah.
was his role. So I
Okay.
was never upset. And normally you'd be really mad about something like that, but I never was. I just totally understood.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. All right. And then you wrote a book about the communion of saints called The Communion of Saints. Oh, you have it there.
Yeah, I can show it here. There's two. This first one, this is actually I rewrote the first one under a new title, new picture. It's called Talking to God and Grandma, Mystics, Mediums, and Communion of Saints. This book is basically it's kind of a thicker book. It crosses parapsychology, integrates parapsychology, Christian theology, mysticism, and spiritualism. Um, But I wrote it kind of like the idiot's guides. So there's like little instruction things and it's step by step. It's in three parts. Part one is my story that you heard today. My
Mhm.
story is in both books. And then part two is the educational part to learn about the history of the communion of saints. And the word saint just means holy. It refers to actually all people who are believers. That's what I found out. My researcher, you don't have to be dead person. You don't have to be a canonized saint to communicate and pray. So I call it my book on spirit communication for Catholics, but it's for anyone that wants to learn how to communicate with loved ones and the other side, because inside in part three is step-by-step instructions with guided meditations on how to communicate with loved ones, either through meditation or by receiving signs. There's a whole section there on after death communications through signs. So that's that. And then my other book that came out last year is totally different. Not totally, because my NDE is in here only in shorter version. It's called Breakfast with Bluebirds, Inspirational Short Stories.
Beautiful.
And this comes from my years of sending out newsletters and writing short inspirational stories. So I decided one day just collect all these stories in one binder to maybe just have it as a family heirloom and decided to publish it. But they're all true stories. I call it, you're familiar with Chicken Soup of the Soul. I always have to give a shout out to Jack Canfield. I call it my paranormal chicken soup for the soul because they're all true stories from my life, the stories of angels and miracles. There's stories of ghosts and but there's also life lessons. All of them have like life lessons or things that I learned from them. And a lot of the stories are from nature. For example, bluebirds, fireflies, a story about a bear, and then also UFOs, story about aliens experience. And I also am a big Buffalo Bills football fan and wrote two stories in there about the Buffalo Bills and how inspirational they are, and even dedicated the book to the Bills Mafia. And all proceeds for my books go to my Gifts of Grace ministry or can also be used as fundraising events. So this book is a voyage through, just reading a voyage, take you through many humorous and poignant anecdotes about life, death, and life after death. And the heartfelt adventure will lift your spirit and bring hope and healing to the hurting soul. I wrote this book for people that are going through challenges in their life. I just gave a copy to my aunt who's been in and out of the hospital and now in a nursing home and now back to the nursing home. And she started reading it and she said it's been really helpful for her going through that transition in life.
Wonderful. All right, now I'm gonna open it up for anybody that has any questions or comments or all right, let me bring Maria in.
Oh, thank you, Mary Grace. Really interesting. Um, but maybe did you ever think you went to the wrong priest? Because not all priests might have reacted that way to you. Um, just a question.
Yeah, well, number one, there's only one, one church, one priest, small town. And
Mhm.
people had all said to me, well, just go to a different church. I'm like, no, because that priest represented all priests in what they were taught, what they're taught in seminary school. I understood. He's just upholding the rules of the faith. He was doing his job. My job was to change the rules because I thought it was easier to change the rules of the church than it is to change me. So that's why I did all the research and wrote about the communion of saints to educate people that yes, we can communicate with loved ones in spirit. You just don't call it spiritualism. You say, I'm practicing the communion of saints or communication with the saints. It's all syntax in the words that you use. So, because as Catholics, we're always talking to dead people. I would pray to them all the time. Whenever I lose something, I'm praying to St. Anthony. Praying to St. Michael or St. Christopher in travels and
And
all
put
the
Saint
time.
Anne, send me a man as fast as you can.
They, it's
Good
funny
Saint
because
Anne, that was one of them.
I never heard
I,
that one. It's
oh yeah,
funny.
well, I raised a Catholic, but aside from that, I'm interested too with your doctor's responses when all of these tests came out negative.
Well, the one doctor said, I couldn't explain it, but just keep doing what you're doing. Okay. I'll keep meditating and walking in nature. And that was it. That was it.
They didn't
So,
delve further then. No curiosity there from them. Strange, isn't it?
yeah. And I think I mentioned, yeah, that I did taper off all 24 medications within a couple months after my experience.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and now we have Diane. Oh, We can't hear you, Diane. Maybe turn up your volume.
She's muted.
Yeah, I still can't hear you. It looks like you're.
You're muted. Unmute, Diane.
Can you unmute her, Catherine?
She is. She's
She's
unmuted.
on. I'm
but-
unmuted.
Oh, now I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Great.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Mary Grace. Thanks. It was a very interesting talk. I'm curious though about the after effects with the food. So, as a vegan, I know I struggle. Clearly, I'm a vegan because I do believe we're all connected, and I believe there's divinity in everything. So I definitely struggle with the food product that I put into my body and trying to square it away of what I'm doing. And also I struggle with my animals because I know I have choice to be able to say, well, I'm not going to eat animals, but as the owner of pets, I struggle with that. So I'm just curious about what your thoughts are after going through your experience and what type of things you eat now.
Do you mean because you struggle with your pets because you've got them captive?
No. I mean, I struggle with my pets because they're carnivores. So I have cats and dogs. And so while
okay.
I can make the decision not to buy meat and cook meat, clearly I don't think that I can extend it to my animals because
Well,
of their
yeah,
needs.
I would agree to that. I mean, I feed my cats. I don't have dogs anymore, but they get the canned cat food. And I think that's best for their nutrition and their health. That's just natural for them. It's, different with the animal world. Now, one of the things that I struggle with the pets is like every time I take my cat, it's like I have to grab my cat, and I guess that has to go more with the UFO scenarios, the abduction thing. It's like you have to grab them and put them in a cage. And, my one cat doesn't even like to be touched, much less picked up, put in a cage, howls all the way to the vet. And I feel so bad. I'm like practically crying all the way to the vet because I can feel this cat's emotions. I feel so bad. And it's like I've abducted them, especially when you got to take them out in the cold weather. But you come home and you let them out, and an hour later, they're forgiving you, they're in your lap, and all's right with the world. So, but yeah, I do kind of sometimes think, well, geez, they don't have a choice. We got them captive, but I'll tell you, I got 3 cats and 2 of them have not gone outside all winter. They have the choice. They got a dog. They can go outside anytime they want, and they're just as soon happy in the house. They're like, are you crazy? We're not going out.
So you're still eating, you're a vegetarian at this point.
For the most part. I mean, over the years, I am not as strict as I used to be. So now actually right from the beginning, I ate meat 4 times a year. And that was on holidays. It was like the Christmas. So I indulged or whatever and said, okay, Christmas, Easter, holidays, St. Patrick's Day. And but over the last few years, I started indulging in buffalo style chicken wings during football games. Because it almost seems like a sin not to. But for the most part, yeah, I'm not strict at all. I'm very aware with chicken. I mean, we have chicken farms around here. My husband used to work on a chicken farm. If it's not free range chicken and you understand how they cram 20 chickens into one little room,
Yeah.
what would that do to you? It would cause you to go insane. And you are what you eat. So if you eat insane chickens, I think that's what's wrong with a lot of this world is we're eating insane chickens. Seriously, it's passed on. You would just go and they keep them in these cages and yeah, it's awful. It's awful. So I think if I do, even with the eggs, I eat eggs, so I try and get the free reign, and organic eggs and things like that. I got a best friend that's a herbalist, so I'm very organic conscious. I'm conscious of what I put in my body. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else?
I also will mention that I realized that our bodies are our temples. I would have these scriptures come to me, and I said, well, before they just didn't make sense, but then all of a sudden they started making sense. Your body is your temple. Well, what does that mean? Well, when you can feel a presence inside of you and know that you're a part of God, all of a sudden I thought, well, what I put into my body, I'm putting into God's temple. So if I was like doing drugs or smoking pot, I wouldn't go into a church and smoke pot and drink a beer. But that's exactly what I was doing when I put these things in my body, is because you were affecting your own health, you're affecting God. So that was just another thing that came to me. Actually, I wrote about that, is that, wow, it really is your temple, that you want to take care of it. Because to take care of yourself, you're taking care of God, you're taking care of everybody else, especially your own family. Take care of yourself first.
That's right. Thank you. All right. So I don't see any hands up. I just want to double check. Okay. Well, this has been wonderful. And yeah, your story is really, really profound, and there's so much to it. And I just I want to thank you again for being here, for sharing your journey with us. And is there any last minute thing that you'd like to say before we go?
Yeah, I do like to say, it's funny because I think it's Jeff Mara always says one last thing. And my message I like to put out there is that whatever challenge you're going through, whatever's going on in your life, put your trust and faith in God. Know that you're going to get through this. Don't put your trust and faith in the government, or a lot of times even family members will let you down. Put your trust and faith in God and know that everything is going to be all right. You're going to come out of this unscathed on the other end and in a much better place.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Mary Grace. And thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you all
Thank
for
you.
listening.
And I look forward to seeing you all again next week. And have a wonderful, wonderful week. Many blessings to everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.